Jenna smiled as the notification sound chimed on her phone. Another comment had appeared under her latest Instagram post, a glamorous photo of her perfectly made up face and flowing blonde hair. She scrolled through the compliments flooding in from her 537 followers, basking in their praise. Gorgeous, as always. You're such an inspiration. Your life looks like a dream. Only they knew the truth behind her carefully crafted facade. She glanced over at Mark, sprawled on the couch, scowling as he scrolled through his own phone. The tension in the air was palpable. Though to her followers she projected only positivity, that was the brand she had built over 5 successful years as an influencer. A life of luxury, love, and happiness for all to envy. In reality, cracks had begun to form in her marriage long ago. Mark had never fully supported her career, resenting the attention she received. At first, he tried to hide his jealousy, but it grew more overt over time. He monitored her posts, critiquing every outfit, pose, and caption. If she gained more than a few followers in a day, he would accuse her of flirting. His controlling behavior only intensified as her platform expanded. Now, he barely let her leave the house without him. All of her free time was spent maintaining her image online rather than spending real moments with friends or family. She had become isolated under his watch, her world shrinking to these 4 walls. Even little Emily noticed the tension, though at 5 years old she didn't fully understand. Jenna tried to shield her daughter from their arguments, but it was growing harder with Mark's shortening temper. Tonight, something had set him off again during dinner. She couldn't even remember what triggered it now in the aftermath of his rage. Plates and glasses had shattered against the wall as he screamed in her face, spittle flying. Emily sat frozen, tears streaming down her cheeks as she clutched her favorite doll. Jenna fought the urge to cover the girl's ears, knowing any sudden movement might make the situation worse. When Mark finally stormed from the room, she let out a shaky breath and pulled Emily into her arms. "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here. I won't let anything happen to you, I promise." But as she soothed the girl's sobs and tucked her into bed, a sick feeling twisted in Jenna's stomach. Mark's outbursts were escalating, and she didn't know how long she could keep that promise. All she knew was that she had to protect Emily at all costs, even if it meant sacrificing her perfect online world. The real danger was no longer what lurked beyond their door. It had invaded their home and was festering in the darkness beside her. Emily bounced excitedly around the backyard, pink party dress swishing around her knees. Streamers and balloons decorated the patio. A pile of presents sat waiting under a banner that read, "Happy 5th birthday." Jenna smiled wearily as she watched her daughter play, the dark circles under her eyes hidden by expertly applied concealer. It had taken all her energy to plan this party while dodging Mark's constant accusations at home. Guests began arriving. Emily's preschool friends, neighbors, and a few of Jenna's influencer friends who had known her since before her rise to fame. As the kids ran off to play pin the tail on the donkey, Jenna greeted everyone with her signature radiant smile. But her friend Amy saw past the facade, pulling her in for a tight hug. "You look exhausted, Jen." "Is everything okay?" she asked in a low voice. Jenna hesitated, not wanting to ruin Emily's special day with her problems. Before she could answer, Mark appeared at her side, draping an arm possessively around her waist. "Everything's great, isn't it, babe?" he said, through a fake smile of his own, squeezing her hip hard enough to bruise. She winced, but nodded, forcing cheer into her tone. "Of course, I'm so glad you all could make it." As the party continued, Jenna moved through the motions in a daze. She refilled chips and drinks, helped Emily blow out her candles, cut and served the princess-themed cake. All the while, she felt Mark's eyes burning into her back, tracking her every interaction. When had he started seeing enemies? Everywhere? She turned. By late afternoon, the exhaustion and stress had caught up to Jenna. As she cleaned up paper plates and cups, her hands shook so badly she dropped a stack onto the ground. They shattered at her feet, the noise like a gunshot in the tense atmosphere. Mark appeared instantly, grabbing her arm in a vice grip as he hissed in her ear. "Can't you do anything right? You're such a fuck-up, Jen." She flinched, tears springing to her eyes as the remaining guests watched awkwardly. Amy stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Mark's shoulder. "Hey, why don't you give her a break? It was an accident." "Big mistake." Mark whirled on the other woman, shoving her backward into the patio table. "Don't fucking touch me. This is none of your business." Gasps rose up as Amy clutched her elbow, a dark bruise already forming on her pale skin. Jenna grabbed Mark's arm, pleading, "Please stop. You're scaring the kids. It's Emily's birthday. Can't we just—" He rounded on her with a snarl. "You think you can control me? I'm so sick of you acting like the perfect little wife when we both know the truth." Reaching into his back pocket, Mark pulled out a sleek black handgun, aiming it at Jenna's head. She froze, eyes wide with terror as the party descended into chaos. Children screamed and cried, parents herding them inside as fast as they could. Amy crawled away, frantically, calling 911 between sobs. Only Emily remained motionless, the dropped cake forgotten at her feet, as she stared in horror at the weapon in her father's hand. Mark cocked the gun with an ominous click, his face twisted in a mask of rage. "You've humiliated me for the last time, you stupid bitch. It's time this charade ended, once and for all." Jenna held up her hand slowly, voice trembling. "Mark, please. Think about Emily. Don't do something you'll regret." He laughed bitterly. "The only thing I regret is ever meeting you. Say goodbye to your fake followers, Jen. This is the only thing that'll be real from now on." His finger tightened on the trigger, and Jenna screamed, lunging forward to knock the gun aside. But it was too late. Two deafening bangs rang out, fire and smoke exploding from the barrel. Her body jerked violently before collapsing to the ground, blood pooling rapidly across the flagstones. As sirens wailed in the distance, Emily stood frozen, her pink dress now stained crimson. With shaking hands, she lifted her phone to livestream the scene, compelled to document the horror, even as her young mind struggled to comprehend it. This was the reality behind her mother's perfect online world, a darkness that could never be erased, no matter how many likes it received. The video had spread like wildfire across the internet. Within minutes of Emily live streaming the bloody scene, it was being reposted and shared endlessly on every social media platform. Hashtags like Ujjana Wilson and a birthday massacre trended worldwide as people watched in horrified fascination, unable to look away from the raw footage of Jenna's final moments. Some viewers left sympathetic comments, praying for Emily and condemning Mark's actions, but many others used it as an opportunity to gossip, speculating what really went on behind the family's closed doors. Armchair detectives picked the video apart frame by frame, debating whether Jenna could have been saved if she hadn't lunged at Mark. Influencers who had known Jenna weighed in on her character, some defending her while others hinted that not all was as it seemed. Through it all, Emily sat numbly in the back of an ambulance, sirens wailing as paramedics cut away her soiled dress. She stared unseeingly at the phone, still clutched in her tiny hands, replaying that terrible scene on an endless loop. No matter how many times she watched, she couldn't make sense of what had happened, or believe it was real. Her daddy had always been so loving before, reading her bedtime stories and tickling her until she laughed. How could he point a gun at her mommy and pull the trigger? At the hospital, detectives tried gently questioning Emily, but she remained unresponsive, eyes glassy. A social worker took the phone to preserve it as evidence, but the damage was done. That video of her personal trauma was now public property, dissected by strangers worldwide, with no thought for her well-being. She had unwittingly become an internet sensation at only 5 years old, her privacy and innocence stripped away in an instant. In the following days, Emily barely ate or slept. Anytime she closed her eyes, she saw her mother falling again and again in a nightmare loop. The doctors diagnosed her with acute stress disorder and prescribed medication, but nothing could erase the images seared into her memory. At home, all traces of her former life had been removed. No photos remained of Jenna, smiling, or the blood-stained backyard. But she couldn't escape reminders of that night, everywhere online. Lurking in the comments under news articles, she would come across debates calling her mother a bad parent or wondering what Emily herself had witnessed. No one seemed to care about the trauma of a little girl who lost everything in an instant. To the internet, she was just another piece of true crime gossip to dissect until the next viral story came along. But to Emily, it was her shattered reality playing on repeat. A horror she couldn't wake up from, no matter how hard she screamed. Detective Ryan sighed as he scrolled through the case files, piled high on his desk. It had been a week since the Wilson shooting went viral, and public interest showed no signs of slowing down. Every new piece of evidence or witness statement that emerged only seemed to generate more online speculation and conspiracy theories. He clicked open the autopsy reports first. Jenna Wilson had died from 2 gunshot wounds to the chest. Death would have been near instantaneous. The trajectory indicated she was facing Mark when he fired. Consistent with the live stream footage, Mark himself remained the prime suspect, currently in custody, awaiting trial. But something about the case nagged at Ryan, a feeling that they were still missing part of the story. Setting aside the grim paperwork, he pulled up Jenna's social media instead, scrolling back years through her perfectly curated Instagram. Everything portrayed a life of luxury and marital bliss. Mansion tours, lavish vacations, candid shots of Mark and Jenna kissing on the beach. It was the picture of influencer success. But as with any highlight reel, was this an accurate reflection of reality? Ryan clicked into Jenna's direct messages, scanning for any hints of trouble in paradise. Near the bottom, one thread caught his eye. Messages exchanged with her friend Amy only a few months prior. "I'm so scared, Amy. Mark has been getting more controlling. He barely lets me out of his sight. What if one day he really hurts Emily or me? You need to get out of there, Jen. This isn't healthy. You and Emily can stay with me as long as you need." "I know. You're right. I'm just afraid of what he might do if I try to leave. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells every day." The messages ended there with no resolution. Had Jenna been too afraid to take that leap to safety, Ryan made a note to re-interview Amy, hoping she could provide more context about the cracks in Jenna's perfect marriage. He also pulled Jenna's phone records, noticing a pattern of increasingly restricted contact with friends and family over the past year. All calls and texts in the months before her death had been to or from Mark. Had he isolated her from any support system that could help her escape? It was time to pay Mark another visit in lockup and get some answers. At the county jail, Mark glared sullenly as Ryan took a seat across from him. "We've been digging deeper into your relationship with Jenna. Several things aren't adding up to the picture. Perfect life you portrayed. Care to explain what was really going on?" Mark's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Ryan continued, voice hard. "We have evidence Jenna was afraid of you, that you were controlling and isolating her. So why don't you tell me your side of things? What pushed you over the edge that day?" Silence. Ryan leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "You're only hurting your case by not cooperating, Mark. Based on what we know, it's looking a lot like this was premeditated murder, not a crime of passion. I suggest you start talking before things get any worse for you." 3 months had passed in the blink of an eye. Fall was fading into winter as the leaves turned vibrant shades of red and gold. But inside the walls of her new home, Emily felt colorless and numb. After the shooting, she'd been placed in a foster home while the legal process played out. Her foster parents were kind, but she barely spoke to them, retreating into herself. The only noise that could pierce her silence was the TV droning constantly in the living room, where she sat transfixed by news coverage of the trial. Mark had pled not guilty, claiming temporary insanity and that Jenna had provoked him during their argument. But the prosecution painted a different picture using evidence from the investigation. They portrayed Mark as a controlling abuser who had grown increasingly unstable and violent, finally snapping that tragic day. Emily watched detached as witness after witness took the stand, recounting the cracks in Jenna's marriage that no one had seen until it was too late. Amy tearfully described Jenna's fears. The detectives spoke of Mark's isolation tactics. Even some of Jenna's influencer friends admitted that beneath her perfect posts, she'd seemed unhappy for a long time. The jury deliberated for less than a day before returning with their verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. As Mark was led away in cuffs, screaming obscenities, Emily felt nothing, no sense of justice or closure, just emptiness. Her parents were gone, and nothing could undo the horrors she'd witnessed. On the anniversary of the shooting, news vans still camped outside the empty Wilson mansion, hoping for a soundbite from Emily. But she stayed locked in her room, hugging a worn teddy bear as rain lashed the windows. A soft knock sounded. Her social worker, Claire, peeked in. "Emily, there's someone here who'd like to meet you." A nervous woman with kind eyes stood behind Claire, clutching a bouquet of flowers. "This is your Aunt Sarah. She's your mom's sister, and she's here to take you home with her if you'd like." Home. The word felt foreign now, like something from a past life. But Emily nodded slowly, rising to pack the few belongings she had left. As Claire drove them to the airport, Emily gazed out the window into the gray sky, wondering if she would ever feel at home again. All she knew for certain was that her shattered dreams were buried alongside her mother, lost forever in the darkness of that fateful night.